Hello everyone, and welcome back to Shadow Whisper. Tonight's story takes us deep into the mountains of northern Idaho, to a place that almost no one talks about anymore. They call it Lake Merrin. It doesn't appear on most maps. Cell service fades the moment you get near it. And for decades, rangers have quietly avoided patrolling its southern shore after dark. Last year, a routine patrol stumbled upon something that defied every rule of logic. 7 empty chairs arranged around a burning campfire. The seats were still warm, the coffee cups still steaming, but there wasn't a single footprint in the dirt. What happened on that shoreline has haunted everyone who's gone near the lake since. So, if you think you can handle it, get comfortable. Turn down the lights, and make sure to subscribe to Shadow Whisper, because once you hear these accounts, you'll never look at an empty campsite the same way again. This is The Last Campfire on Merrin Shore. I've pulled plenty of bodies out of cold water. You learn the routines. Triangulate last seen point, set a search grid, descend slow, and pretend you don't feel the way the dark presses on your mask. Lake Merrin wasn't new to me. What was new was the sonar, showing 2 returns at 9 meters when we only had 1 missing. The call came at 6:14 p.m., August wind chopping the surface into tight lines. A 22-year-old swimmer named Caleb drifted off the south dock and never came back up. Witnesses swore he didn't struggle. He just slipped under like something turned him flat and pulled him neatly away. We launched from the ranger ramp before sunset, me and Ortiz on entry, Riley running sonar. The lake was that Merrin color I hate. Not blue, not green, a reflective black that swallows sky. The shoreline smelled of wet cedar and old fish. There's a little cabin across the way that always looks abandoned, even when someone's in it. I remember thinking it leaned closer to the water than the last time I'd seen it, as if the ground was sliding. "Grid is set," Riley said over the handheld. His voice had that tightness he gets when the readings don't match the map. "Last seen is 50 meters off the dock. Depth 10 to 12. I've got a primary return and..." He hesitated. "Something else. Similar size. Same depth. Debris?" I asked. "Could be," he said, which meant he didn't believe it. We suited fast. The evening was cooling, and Merrin's thermocline is a razor. I checked my pressure twice, clipped the lifeline, and closed my eyes to listen. The steady hiss of my regulator, the faint slap of water on the hull, Ortiz humming under his breath, the same half-prayer he does every dive. People think courage is loud. Real courage sounds like air moving in and out. "On you," he said, hand on my shoulder. We dropped as the sun went behind the ridge and the light died like someone doused it with a blanket. First 3 meters were brown-green with pollen and silt. At 5, everything went gray. At 7, the cold bit hard enough to ache in my teeth. The thermocline. We push through. Merrin goes quiet below that line. The world narrows to the circle of your lamp. Heavy particles drifting like ash. Long strands of weed reaching for your fins. I swept my beam left to right along the grid rope. No silt plume, no bubbles, nothing moving but us. At 9 meters, something knocked the light back at me. 2 pale ovals in the beam. I flinched, heart punching my throat before I realized what I was seeing. Dock ladders, aluminum rungs, lying flat on the bottom, reflective with bacterial film. Someone tore a ladder off and threw it in, I thought. Lake kids. My body didn't care that I'd solved it. Adrenaline kept nailing the inside of my ribs anyway. "Riley, I'm at 9, I said. Visibility 1 meter. Negative on subject. Confirm secondary return? Affirmative, he said. Bearing 027 from your position, stable, and... Pete? He rarely uses my name. It's moving a little. Currents? I asked, already knowing Merrin doesn't run like that. No wind shear. Your bubbles aren't reaching me. It's... Hold on. A pause. It just got closer. I signaled Ortiz. We kicked and drifted over muck that didn't billow. Stayed heavy, like the bottom didn't want to be disturbed. The weeds were different here. Thicker, braided, rooted in slots of black that looked like cracks in a painted floor. Something bumped my knee. I swung the lamp down. Not a log, not cable. A length of rope, new bright white, snaked from the silt, vanishing forward into dark. The end nearest me was cut clean. Ortiz's lamp found my beam. He pointed, footprints. Not fish scatter. Human prints impressed into the lake bed mud, heels deep, toes shallow, moving in a straight line away from our search rope. The stride was wrong. Too even for someone walking in gear, too neat for the churned mess panic leaves. "Riley?" I said. "We've got tracks." "Copy," he said, and his voice turned small. "Your primary just dropped half a meter. The second return is now directly beneath you." I lifted my lamp. The water in front of me had gone darker than dark, like someone held smoked glass over the world. My breath sounded too loud. I had the dumb impulse to hold it as if the lake would hear me. Then I saw the hand, not reaching, not clawing. Palm down, fingers splayed, lying flat on the bottom like it was pressing something still. The skin was white and smooth, the way bodies go after an hour in cold. No rings, no tattoos. Just a hand exactly like a mannequin hand except for one thing. The fingers flexed, slow as weeds in a current that didn't exist. "Contact," I said, and the word felt brittle slipping past my teeth. We moved in. Ortiz cut the distance with 3 steady kicks. He's fearless on a line, always has been. His beam slid up the wrist, the forearm. It ended at the elbow. Beyond that, nothing. No shoulder, no body. The arm disappeared into the lake bed like the muck was a sleeve. "Christ," Ortiz breathed. I could hear the regulator bite in his voice. The hand lifted, not much. 2 inches, maybe 3. The palm inverted like it was turning to face us, inviting or warning, I couldn't tell. The fingers curled once, not grabbing, just counting. 1, 2, 3. The third curl stuck like a tremor. "Back," I said. "Back off." Ortiz shook his head, just a flick, stubborn, and reached for the wrist the way we're trained to do when a subject is snagged. The silt around the elbow tightened as if it clenched. The hand closed on nothing, then opened, then closed again. Not a death twitch. A pattern. "Riley," I said, watching the mud around that arm breathe. Update, silence. Then I lost both returns. Static licked the channel. The lake swallowed the edges of the world. Ortiz touched the wrist. It was the light that went wrong first. My beam flattened, dimming from a cone to a disc like a coin held in front of my face. Ortiz's light did the same, compressing into this narrow plate of illumination that slid over the muck like a spotlight on a stage. The hand turned inside it as if following the glow. Behind us, something scraped the grid rope. My brain named it. Perch, snag, our bubbles. My gut named something else, footfall. Heavy, careful. Not behind us anymore. Around us like a circle tightening. "Abort," I said, too loud, voice fogging my mask. We abort. Ortiz didn't move. He was staring past my shoulder into my darkness. And even through the fog and glass I could see the way his eyes had changed. Widened, then gone narrow, measuring distance to something I couldn't yet see. "What?" I said. "What do you see?" He didn't answer me. He raised 2 fingers, the signal for up. Then he pointed down past the hand into the place where the arm vanished into the lake bed. I tilted my lamp. The mud wasn't mud. It was skin. Not human, something like skin, stretched thin and pale under a film of silt, pulsing very softly. The hand wasn't stuck in the lake bed. The lake bed was holding it the way a mouth holds a tongue. "Up," I said, throat gone dry enough to burn. "Now." The grid rope scraped again. Closer. The dark around us breathed like a lung. Then the hand reached for my lamp and closed its fingers around the light. The beam pinched to nothing, and for a heartbeat, Merrin turned completely black. We kicked for the line we couldn't see. Above the surface was a ceiling we might never touch. And behind us, close enough that I felt it in the water, the other return finally moved. The first rule of a failed dive is don't think, act. "Find your line." "Ascend slow. Keep breathing." That's what I told myself as the dark pressed in and the lake swallowed every direction. But Merrin didn't care about rules. The moment the light died, something heavy brushed past my shoulder. Not current, not fish. It felt intentional. "Ortiz," I shouted through the mic, but the comm crackled like it was full of gravel. No reply. Just a long, low vibration, a sound so deep it felt like it was coming from inside my skull. My fingertips found the grid rope. Relief hit me like air after drowning. I wrapped my glove around the line and started to pull myself up inch by inch. Then the rope jerked. Not slack. Jerked. Once, hard enough to snap the silt off the bottom. I froze. In my periphery, the dark moved, slow, circular, as if something large was pacing just beyond my light's memory. I reached for my backup torch. The beam sputtered twice before it caught, spilling pale light across the mud. There was the hand again, palm open, facing upward now. The wrist still sunk into that living lake bed, but now there were more. 4, maybe 5 pale shapes rising from the muck, all at different depths, not reaching, just waiting. Their fingers moved with a rhythm that didn't feel random, like they were counting something, or calling something. I looked around for Ortiz, nothing but a cloud of bubbles drifting from somewhere deeper. I kicked off the bottom, following them. The silt rose like smoke. I kept my light steady, down not up. My gut told me the surface wasn't the way out anymore. About 20 feet ahead, I saw his fins, motionless. Ortiz was suspended upright, facing downward, regulator still in his mouth, but no bubbles leaving it. His lamp dangled from his wrist, swinging slowly. I swam closer, grabbed his shoulder, and turned him toward me. His mask was gone. Eyes wide, bloodless, staring past me toward the bottom, then I saw it too. The bottom wasn't flat anymore. It moved, not like a current, but like something breathing under the surface. The skin-like muck stretched and pulsed, the texture forming faint outlines, ribs, shoulders, a distorted face pressing upward from beneath the sediment. A sound came through my comm again, faint, like a radio signal echoing from deep below. Not Ortiz, not Riley, it was a whisper. Help him finish, I yanked Ortiz's regulator. No response. Tried his BCD valve, nothing. The pressure gauge read steady. He wasn't out of air, he just wasn't there anymore. The lake pulsed again and a ripple spread out from beneath him. All those pale hands along the lake bed turned at once, all palms up now, reaching toward us like they were welcoming something back. The sonar pinged faintly in my ear, Riley's panicked voice breaking through static. Pete, I've got you at 11 meters, but Jesus, the lake's echoing. It's reading a cavity below you. Open space, 30 feet down, moving. Pull us out, I shouted. Pull the line now. The rope tightened. I kicked upward with everything I had, one hand still gripping Ortiz's harness. But as soon as we rose a few feet, the rope went slack. Something below had taken hold of it. The next jerk nearly tore my shoulder out of its socket. Ortiz's body yanked downward so fast I lost grip of his harness. My backup light slipped from my hand and spun away, spiraling like a coin falling through water, before vanishing into total black. I followed it with my eyes just long enough to see the face. It was inches from my fins, rising through the silt, pale and enormous like a drowned reflection. Its eyes were open and glowing faintly, not with light but with pressure, the way deep-sea creatures do. It opened its mouth, and for a split second, I saw something inside it. Shapes drifting upward, limp and human-sized, like divers without tanks. Then the mouth closed, and the water around me inhaled. That's the only way I can describe it. The entire lake drawing one single breath. My chest compressed, my gauges spiked, my limbs locked as if gravity reversed. I don't remember swimming. I don't remember surfacing, just light, bright and sudden, and someone's hands pulling me over the gunnel. Then Riley's voice screaming my name. I coughed up lake water until I saw stars. He was shaking me by the collar, yelling, "Where's Ortiz?" The question didn't even make sense at first. Then I looked around. The lifeline we'd used was still coiled neatly in the boat. Never unrolled, never cut. Ortiz's gear wasn't missing. It wasn't there. And that's when I noticed my dive computer. Elapsed bottom time, 2 minutes 47 seconds. But Riley swore I'd been under for 43 minutes. I don't remember the drive back. Just the rhythmic sound of rain hitting the windshield and the taste of metal in my mouth. The sheriff's deputy met us at the ranger station. I gave him the usual: depth, visibility, loss of contact, failed recovery. It came out flat, procedural. My voice didn't sound like my own. He nodded, wrote notes he wouldn't believe later, and finally said, "You were lucky. Merrin doesn't give people back often." I stared at him. He said it the way someone might talk about a person. Like the lake decided things. They sent a recovery team the next morning. Sonar drones, remote lights, the works. They found nothing. Not Ortiz, not his tank, not even our dropped flashlight. Just an empty crater in the silt where the sonar showed a hollow space that shouldn't have existed. I tried to move on. Tried to tell myself that panic, nitrogen narcosis, time distortion, all of it could make you believe things down there. But then the call started. It was 3 nights later. 2:46 a.m., my cell rang. The caller ID showed Ortiz. I stared at it until it stopped. No voicemail. Just silence. The next night it rang again. Same time, same number, I finally answered. For a few seconds, nothing, just a deep, slow breathing. Then a sound like water running over a mic, and beneath it my own voice from the dive recorder. Contact. Grid 9, Riley confirmed second return. I dropped the phone. When I checked the logs later, there was no record of incoming calls. Not on the sim, not on the carrier. But I know what I heard. By the end of that week, I went back to Lake Merrin, alone. Some things you can't ignore, not when the silence keeps following you. The water looked wrong. Too calm. You could see your own reflection perfectly even in the wind, like the lake was holding still for you to look closer. I set up on the dock where Caleb had gone under. The air smelled like iron and rain-soaked pine. When I leaned over the edge, I saw my reflection, and something else. Two shapes standing behind me. One was Ortiz. The other looked like me, only paler, eyes open wider than they should be. I spun around. Nothing there, but the reflection stayed. Both of them reached up, fingers just below the surface, palm against mine. The ripples didn't distort their faces. They were clearer than the real world above them. Something brushed the dock and a wet slap. I looked down. A single diver's glove floated against the piling, fingers half curled. It was Ortiz's. I'd recognized that patchwork repair on the thumb anywhere. When I lifted it, water poured from inside, black and thick like oil. And in it, something small and metallic clinked against the wood. It was my dive computer, the same one still strapped to my wrist. Only this one's screen was cracked, and across the display faint numbers flickered through static. 11:47. Ortiz. Ascending. I stepped back. The lake surface rippled, though the wind had stopped completely. And then beneath the dock something exhaled. The sound came from deep below, a long, slow breath rising through layers of water. Each bubble that reached the surface widened into a perfect ring that didn't break apart. Just spread outward and dissolved like fog. I felt that same pressure behind my eyes, the same presence I'd felt below the grid. The lake was watching me. The glove slipped from my hand and floated back toward the center of Merrin. The reflection followed it. Both figures, Ortiz and the other me, walking backward under the water step for step until they vanished into the black. That was 3 months ago. I haven't gone back, but sometimes I drive the ridge road that overlooks the lake at night. From up there, Merrin looks smaller, quiet, even peaceful. But if you stop your truck and roll the window down, you can hear something that doesn't belong in mountain wind. A faint knocking under the water, 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. And if you wait long enough, the fog over the lake starts to part, like it's making space for something to rise. Last week, I finally checked the ranger logs. They've had sonar interference again. Echoes that showed 2 identical shapes at 9 meters, moving together in perfect sync. Every scan, every angle, the same. One of them wears a rescue harness. The other is holding a flashlight. When I close my eyes now, I still feel it. That endless, slow inhalation from below. The lake hasn't taken me yet, but it's patient. Every diver knows the deeper you go, the more the surface starts to feel like it's watching you back. And at Lake Merrin, the surface knows your name. Locals used to joke that Lake Merrin didn't have tides. It just breathed. The waterline shifted every week or so, creeping up and pulling back without warning, swallowing patches of grass and spitting them out a few days later. Most folks stopped building too close to the shore, except for the man in the cabin. His name was Arthur Bellamy, though everyone in Clearwater County called him Captain. He wasn't a real captain, never worked on boats, never served at sea, but he spent so much time on Merrin that the name just stuck. He lived alone in a 1-room cabin on the southern bank, half hidden behind birch trees and fog. The locals said he'd been there since the 80s, but no one could agree on what he did for a living or where he came from before that. Every night at sunset, you could see a dim yellow light in his window, flickering like an oil lamp, and just after midnight, that light would move and not flicker but shift, like the cabin itself had turned slightly toward the water. It was Riley, the same sonar tech from my last dive, who told me that story first. He'd grown up near Merrin. He swore that every few years the cabin got a little closer to the shoreline. "Used to be up the hill," he said once, pointing through the fog. "Now it's practically floating." I didn't believe him until the night the storm came. It was October. The season when the lake went still and the trees looked like silhouettes cut from black paper. The storm rolled in just after dark, the kind of mountain thunder that shakes the window panes and makes you taste metal in the air. I was staying at the ranger's bunkhouse that week, logging maintenance dives after what had happened to Ortiz. Around midnight, the radio crackled. One of the shoreline monitors had triggered near the south bank, the same coordinate range where the Bellamy cabin stood. Possible structural collapse. I should have waited until morning, but curiosity is a stronger current than fear sometimes. I threw on a rain jacket, grabbed my flashlight, and took the service path along the lake. Wind tore at the trees, scattering needles across the trail. The air smelled sharp, pine and ozone, the smell right before lightning hits too close. When I reached the clearing, I stopped dead. The cabin had moved. Not fallen. Moved. It sat 10, maybe 15 feet closer to the water than the week before. The foundation posts were tilted forward, half submerged in mud. And in the beam of my flashlight, I could see something even stranger. The front steps, which used to lead to a small porch, were gone. In their place was black water, lapping quietly against the threshold. The front door was open. Not blown open by wind, propped open with a heavy stone keeping it from closing. I hesitated on the path, scanning the shoreline. No footprints, no debris trail, just the rain hissing through the pines and the faint glow of that same yellow lamp inside. "Captain Bellamy," I called out. My voice came out thinner than I expected. No response. I waded forward, boots sinking into cold mud, and stepped up to the doorframe. The floor inside was slick and uneven, water pooling an inch deep across the boards. The air smelled like wet wood and mold and something else. Metallic. Sweet. The lamp sat on a table in the corner, flame steady. Its glass chimney was spotless, too clean for a man who lived alone in the woods. "Hello?" I called again, quieter this time. A sound answered me. Not a voice, and a low groan of shifting timber, like the cabin was settling on new ground. The walls trembled. I could feel it in my boots, a faint rhythmic vibration beneath the floor. At first I thought it was the storm, but the sound wasn't thunder. It was breathing, a slow, drawn-out inhale somewhere below the foundation, followed by a soft exhale that rippled the puddles at my feet. The lamp flickered once, twice, then steadied again, and that's when I saw the photographs. Dozens of them, nailed to the far wall in uneven rows. Each one water-stained, edges curled, faces barely visible. But the subject was always the same. The cabin. Taken from across the lake at different times under different light. In the oldest photos, the cabin sat high on the hill, far from the shoreline. Then gradually, image by image, it crept closer to the water. Closer, closer, until, in the final photograph, it was exactly where I stood, half floating, its reflection stretched into the black beneath it. A droplet hit the back of my neck. Not rain. The ceiling boards above were dry. I looked up. The corner beam near the door was warping, bending downward, slow but steady, like the wood itself was softening. Water seeped through the grain, dark and thick, and underneath it something pale was pressing against the underside of the floor, a shape just visible through the gaps between boards. I stumbled back, tripping over a submerged chair. The floor exhaled again. This time the puddles rippled outward from the center of the room, not toward the walls but toward me. Something beneath the cabin was moving upward. The water turned cloudy, opaque, and when I looked down into it, my reflection wasn't there anymore. Something else was looking back. It wasn't a face. Not exactly. Just the faint suggestion of features, cheekbones, eyes, as though the lake itself was forming a mirror image that wasn't mine. Then the light went out. Outside, thunder cracked over the ridge. When it faded, the lake was quiet again. Too quiet. From the shoreline, the cabin looked smaller now, tilted, sinking at one corner. The yellow light was gone, and the ripples spreading across the surface weren't moving outward anymore. They were moving in, toward the cabin. By morning, the storm had blown itself out. Gray clouds hung over the ridge, and a fine mist drifted across Lake Merrin like steam rising off cold metal. When I went back to the shoreline, the cabin was half gone. The roof still showed above the waterline, but the rest had sunk to its windowsills. The glass panes glinted just beneath the surface, catching what little daylight made it through the fog. Every few seconds, the lake would lap higher, like a slow tide no one else could see. Riley stood beside me, hands jammed into his jacket pockets. He hadn't spoken since we got there. Finally, he said, "It shouldn't be that deep." He was right. According to the survey maps, the south shelf of Merrin stayed shallow for nearly 40 yards before dropping off. But the cabin was sitting in at least 12 feet of water now. No debris floated. No broken planks, no furniture. It had gone down clean, as if lowered deliberately. Riley raised his binoculars. "Wait," he muttered. "There's someone inside." I took them from him. Through the fogged lenses, I saw movement behind the glass. A figure, pale still, standing in the front window, face half obscured by rippling water. For one stupid heartbeat, I thought it was Captain Bellamy. Then the figure turned. The water distorted it, bending its proportions. The head too narrow, the shoulders wrong. It turned toward us, not swimming, not drifting, standing. Even though the cabin was tilted, it stayed perfectly upright. My stomach tightened. I lowered the binoculars. No one could survive in there overnight. Riley didn't respond. He was staring past me now toward the dock. When I followed his gaze, I saw wet footprints, bare, narrow, leading up from the shore to where we stood. Fresh. He took a step back. "We didn't." "No," I said. "We didn't." The print stopped a few feet away from us, facing the lake. The last ones overlapped our own. Something broke the surface near the cabin. A single bubble the size of a dinner plate, rising slow before it burst. The sound it made wasn't water popping. It was breath, Riley whispered. "Let's go." We turned to leave, but behind us came the faint creak of wood, not from the cabin. From the dock, I turned. A man stood at the far end, facing the lake. Rain jacket, hood up, hands in pockets. His stance calm, almost casual, as if admiring the view. I opened my mouth to call out, to ask if he was part of the recovery crew. But then I realized I could see right through him. Not transparent exactly, more like a heat mirage. The trees behind him wavered where his body should have been solid. Riley took one cautious step closer. "Sir? Are you?" The man tilted his head. Not toward Riley, toward the cabin. And then, without sound or splash, he stepped forward off the dock. Straight down into the water. He didn't float. He didn't sink either. Not the way gravity would take him. He just walked, each step vanishing into the surface as though the lake was swallowing him a little at a time. Within seconds, he was gone. The ripples from his last step met the larger rings coming from the cabin and merged perfectly. No turbulence, no wake. We both stood there, too scared to talk. By the next day, only the roof remained. Rangers set buoys to mark the spot, but the sonar scan came back strange. Solid returns 1 hour, empty water the next. The readings pulsed as if something beneath the surface was moving in slow circles. I didn't tell them about the man on the dock. They'd have blamed exhaustion, stress, anything but what I'd really seen. Still, I couldn't let it go. That evening, when the fog thickened again, I took a boat out alone. The water around the cabin's roof was smooth, too smooth. I cut the engine and drifted until I could see my own reflection perfectly. Me, the boat, and the faint outline of shingles just under the surface. No wind, no sound. Even the insects were silent. Something shimmered below the reflection deep in the glassy water. At first it looked like my face again, but older. Then slowly it smiled. I leaned over, the boat tipping with my weight. The reflection's eyes shifted upward, no longer matching mine. It was looking at something above me. I turned, and nothing but fog. When I looked back down, the reflection was gone. In its place was a window pane, the cabin's front window perfectly intact, now resting on the lake floor below me. A pale hand moved behind the glass. It wasn't waving. It was knocking. Slow, deliberate, 3 times. The sound carried up through the hull. Dull thuds I felt in my bones more than heard. Then as I watched, the entire roof shifted. Not from current, from below. The structure lifted half a foot, floated for a moment, then sank back down, like something massive beneath it had turned over in its sleep. My radio crackled. A voice, wet and distorted, came through the static. "Captain says the water's deeper now." I froze. It was Riley's voice. But Riley was back at the dock, watching me from shore. I could see him. "Captain says it's deeper now," the radio repeated, slower. "He wants the rest to join him." A second later, water surged up around the boat, slapping hard against the sides. The roof of the cabin vanished completely, and from the spot where it sank, bubbles began to rise, dozens of them, all in a single perfect line leading toward my hull. Something below was climbing up. I started the engine. It coughed once, then died. The radio hissed again. "Come closer. He's almost at the surface." I threw the oars overboard and paddled until my arms ached. Behind me, the bubbles followed, each one larger than the last. When I finally hit the dock, I didn't tie the boat. I ran. That night, the fog didn't lift. The surface stayed calm, mirror still. But in the moonlight, if you looked close, you could see faint wooden shapes beneath the water. Walls, a porch, the top of a door frame, and standing just beyond it, near where the front window used to be, was a man's silhouette, face turned upward, waiting. By dawn, Lake Merrin looked glassy enough to walk on. Not a ripple, not a sound, just a smooth gray sheet stretching out where the cabin used to stand. The rangers said it would resurface eventually. Things always did. Boats, boys, drowned deer. But I knew better. Nothing that Merrin takes ever comes back whole. I stayed another week, partly for the paperwork, mostly because I couldn't shake the sense that the lake was unfinished with me. Every night the mist thickened earlier, rolling down from the hills like smoke from an invisible fire. And always I caught the same faint flicker in the fog, the yellow lamplight. It drifted across the water where the cabin had sunk, dim one second, bright the next, as if something below was breathing on the flame. The first few nights I ignored it. By the fourth, I started counting the flashes. 3 long, 1 short, a pause, then again. Riley noticed me watching one evening. "You really think he's down there?" "I think the lake wants me to think that," I said. He didn't laugh. Not anymore. Since the storm, he'd grown quiet, always glancing at the shoreline like someone might be standing there just out of view. That night, he finally told me something I wish he hadn't. "When I was a kid," he said, "my dad took me fishing here. He told me to stay away from the south bank. Said the water there remembers what's built above it." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He looked out over the water. "That every time someone tries to build on Merrin, the lake keeps a copy." On the 6th day, the sonar pinged by itself. No boat, no crew. Just a single pulse echoing across the surface like a heartbeat. The monitor showed something new. An image, faint, low resolution, of a structure at 20 feet. 4 walls, a roof, and next to it another identical outline, and just slightly deeper. 2 cabins, 1 real, 1 shadow. The coordinates matched the Bellamy site exactly. I went out there alone again, against every regulation and every instinct I had left. The fog was thicker this time, hugging the lake like insulation. When I cut the motor, the silence pressed against my ears hard enough to hurt. I dropped a weighted sonar mic. It pinged once, twice. Then the line went slack, as if the weight had landed on something soft. When I reeled it in, the cable came up slick, coated in a film of pale, mucus-like residue that shimmered faintly in the light. I wiped it on the hull and the water hissed where it touched. That's when I saw it, a shape breaking the surface 50 feet out, just under the fog line. Not a head, not a log, a roof. The cabin had come back. Slowly, methodically, it rose until the windows were visible again, water streaming from the frames like tears. And behind the glass, movement. A man stood in the front window, pale and expressionless. His head tilted slightly as if listening. Then he lifted a hand and placed it flat against the glass. It was Bellamy, or what was left of him. The skin on his face had gone translucent like candle wax. Something dark moved beneath it, pulsing in rhythm with the ripples on the lake. He pressed his palm harder against the window, and the whole structure shuddered. A wave spread outward, hitting my boat and rocking it side to side. I gripped the edge of the hull to steady myself, but my hand slipped on the same slick residue that had come up with the sonar cable. My flashlight fell into the water. It didn't sink. It just hung there a few inches below the surface, beam still glowing, caught in something invisible. And then it started to move, why not downward but sideways, gliding toward the cabin like a fly on glass. The light hit the front window and stopped. Bellamy's face illuminated from below. He was smiling now. Behind him, shadows moved. Other shapes, other outlines, unfilling the cabin until the windows went completely black. The water beneath my boat began to vibrate, tiny ripples spreading out in circles. The smell of wet wood and old iron filled the air. I started the engine, but the key wouldn't turn. The metal was slick, alive almost. Every rotation of the propeller made the hull jerk, like the lake itself was holding it in place. The cabin shifted again, creaking as it tilted forward. The roofline broke the surface completely, and then the entire structure inhaled. The lake pulled back several feet, drawing everything, my boat, the fog, the air, inward. I grabbed the rail as the bow tilted toward the water. Something cold brushed my ankle, then another, then a dozen, hands, pale, soft, rising from below, gripping the edge of the hull. They weren't dragging me under. They were steadying me. I looked down, and for a moment I saw their faces through the rippling water. People I recognized. Ortiz, Caleb, even Bellamy. Though he was still standing in the cabin window, they were all smiling. Not happy smiles, just the same blank acceptance you see on people in old photographs. The water stilled, the boat stopped shaking. And then, as if satisfied, the hands let go. The cabin sank again, slowly, gracefully, until only the tip of the roof remained. The surface smoothed over, the ripples fading into nothing. The flashlight floated back up, beam flickering. I left it there. That was 2 years ago. The rangers say the South Shore's off limits now. Unstable ground, potential sinkholes, all the official phrases for what no one wants to name. Every sonar scan since shows double returns. 2 cabins, 2 boats, 2 divers. Every reflection on Merrin is doubled now. You can see it if you go there at dusk, your own image standing behind you in the water, perfectly still while you move. They say lakes are mirrors of the sky. But Merrin isn't reflecting what's above it. It's remembering what it's already taken. It began with the recordings. The first one came from a group of college campers who'd stayed on the north shore of Lake Merrin over Labor Day weekend. They'd set up near the old ranger dock, the same one divers used before the waterline swallowed half the pier. The plan was simple: record some nighttime ambience for a film project. Crickets, frogs, maybe a loon call or two. Instead, they caught something else. The recording started normally, just whined through pine trees and the slap of small waves against the wood. Then, exactly 41 seconds in, a faint echo, a woman's voice. We had repeated one of the campers' lines. Perfectly. You could hear it clearly. "It's so quiet out here," said the girl on mic. And then, less than a second later, "Quiet out here." Same voice, same tone, but coming from somewhere under the dock. They thought it was a glitch. They laughed, rewound it, played it again. The echo stayed. By the next night, more voices had joined. Every word they spoke near the dock came back minutes later, warped and slowed like something replaying them from underwater. When they left the lake, they uploaded the recordings online. A week later, a sound engineer from Portland named James Holt contacted the sheriff's office claiming he could isolate the voices. He said the reflections weren't echoes at all. They were new recordings generated after the original sound. The timestamp data confirmed it. The second voice layers were made hours later, long after the campers had stopped recording. Like the lake had listened first and then spoke back. That's when I got involved. By then, everyone at the ranger station knew my history with Merrin, the diver who lost his partner, the man who saw the cabin move. They figured I'd handle it better than most. They were wrong. I met James at the shoreline just before dusk. He was the kind of tech guy who treated everything like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Nervous energy, too many words, never enough pauses. He carried a small waterproof recorder and a hydrophone wrapped in plastic. "I've done underwater acoustics before," he said, kneeling near the edge. "Sonar echoes don't layer like this. This lake is producing new sound." He dropped the hydrophone into the water, connected it to his laptop, and hit record. The signal hissed through the headphones. Faint static, low rumbles, nothing special. For the first 10 minutes, the only sound was our own breathing and the soft creak of the dock shifting. Then something knocked the hydrophone cable twice. Not a fish bump or branch. Too deliberate. James froze. "Did you feel that?" Before I could answer, a voice came through the headphones. Soft, distorted, whispering words that weren't ours. "You came back." He looked at me like a kid seeing lightning for the first time. "Did you record it?" I said. The voice repeated itself, slower this time. You came back. And beneath it, faintly, something that sounded like breathing. Drawn out and wet, James rewound the file, replayed it. But on the second playback, there was something new layered behind the voice. A third sound. It was my name. Peter. I hadn't said a word into the mic. The air went colder then. Not wind. Just a stillness that made the fog feel heavier. The dock creaked again, long and deep like weight settling onto it. Water slapped against the pylons, but in uneven rhythm as if matching a heartbeat. I leaned over the edge, shining my flashlight down. The beam hit the surface and diffused. That same oily shimmer Merrin always had when it was hiding something. But just before the light faded, I saw ripples forming around the hydrophone cable. They weren't spreading outward. They were circling. James turned the gain up, eyes fixed on the screen. "The source is moving," he whispered. "It's circling the mic." The sound in the headphones rose, wet static, faint whispers, and a new tone underneath. A low hum, steady, almost human. "You came back. You back. You back." And then faint laughter. Not one voice, many. Layered. Repeating. Building like a crowd whispering underwater. The waveform spiked. The recorder overloaded. The speakers popped with a sharp crack, then silence. The dock stopped creaking. The fog stilled. The only sound left was dripping, slow and heavy, from somewhere below the planks. James looked up from the laptop, face drained. "Something's down there," he said. I crouched beside him, shined my light through the gaps in the dock. For half a second, I saw something pale just below the surface, a shape like a face. Then it vanished, dragged sideways into the dark. I looked back up to warn him, but James wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring past my shoulder into the fog beyond the tree line. "Pete," he whispered, "did you bring anyone else?" I shook my head. There was movement in the mist, tall, slow, rhythmic, like someone pacing the shore. A wet slapping sound followed each step. The recorder clicked on again by itself, and through the hiss, a perfect copy of my own voice whispered, "Don't turn around." The first time I disobeyed my own warning, I realized how quiet real fear can be. Not the screaming kind, not the heartbeat that rattles your teeth. Just a silence so deep it feels like it's listening. The recorder on the dock had captured my voice saying, "Don't turn around," but I hadn't said those words. At least not yet. James was still staring into the fog. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I followed his eyes, even though every nerve in me screamed not to. The shoreline beyond the dock was empty except for mist and trees. Then something moved, slow, heavy, tall. It wasn't walking. It was waiting, its knees invisible in the dark water. Each step made that same soft, wet slap we'd heard earlier. "Is that a person?" James whispered. I didn't answer. Whoever or whatever it wasn't sinking. The water on that shelf should have come to a man's chest, but the thing moved level with the surface, gliding more than walking. I killed the flashlight. The sound stopped for a moment, nothing. Then a voice, low, calm, and close, came from the recorder speaker. "Peter," it was my name again. Same tone, same inflection, but now the voice had weight behind it, like someone whispering directly into the metal housing of the device. I felt the hairs on my arms rise. James reached for the recorder. "Maybe it's feedback." Before he could finish, the dock shifted. Not a creak, an actual tilt. The far end dipped 6 inches into the lake, sending a wave slapping against the boards. The hydrophone cable pulled tight and vanished under the surface like something had yanked it down. "Kill the feed," I snapped. James fumbled with the controls. The laptop screen flickered once, then went black. For a second, I thought the battery had died. Then the light came back, but the interface was gone. In its place, grainy footage played across the display. Not live, recorded. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m., the time we'd started recording earlier that night. The video showed the same dock, same fog, same angle, but no one stood on it. Just ripples moving under the planks as if something large was swimming back and forth. "That's impossible," James said. His voice cracked halfway through the word. The video's perspective tilted slightly, as though the camera had been dropped underwater. The screen filled with blackness, and then slowly a pale oval drifted into view. A face, featureless except for its mouth. The lips were open, moving in a rhythm that didn't match the waves. Without sound, I read the words. "It's still recording." James slammed the laptop shut, but the speaker kept hissing. Through it came more voices, ours, repeating fragments of things we'd said since we'd arrived. It's so quiet out here. Did you bring anyone else? Kill the feed. Each word echoed slower, deeper, until it no longer sounded like language. Just wet, gurgling syllables shaped like our voices. The dock tilted again. My flashlight rolled off the boards and into the water. Instead of sinking, it hung there beneath the surface like it had been caught in syrup. The beam pointed down into the dark, illuminating hundreds of tiny bubbles rising from nowhere. They moved in spirals, forming faint rings that spread wider and wider until they touched the posts of the dock. James leaned over, mesmerized. They're forming patterns like sonar distortion. Then something reached out of the water and grabbed his wrist. It wasn't a hand. Too long, too thin. It shimmered like film over oil, transparent at the edges. He screamed and fell forward. I caught his shoulder just before he went in, pulling with everything I had. The thing beneath the water let go, leaving streaks of pale residue across his skin that burned like frost. Back, I shouted. We stumbled toward shore, slipping on the wet boards. The dock groaned under our weight, flexing as though it might fold in half. When we hit solid ground, I turned to look. The hydrophone cable was winding itself around the posts, looping in perfect circles, dragging the recorder toward the lake. The laptop slid after it, screen still glowing faintly even as it slipped below the surface. The fog thickened. My lungs felt heavy, damp. From somewhere beneath the dock, the voices rose again. Not whispers this time, but a low chorus humming through the water. The pitch changed with each ripple, almost melodic. James clutched his wrist, shaking. It's using our sound. It's building something. The humming grew louder until the air itself vibrated. My vision blurred. The reflection of the dock in the water wasn't matching its movements anymore. Each time the real dock shuddered, the reflection lagged half a second behind, like it was remembering rather than mirroring. And then, for one impossible instant, the reflection kept moving even after the real dock stilled. I saw us in that reflection, me and James, still standing there, leaning over the edge. Even though we'd already backed away, the copies opened their mouths and the hum became speech. Stay until morning. The reflection of the lake brightened, not with light from below. Something down there was glowing, outlining the shapes of submerged trees, old pylons, and the faint rectangular shadow of the cabin that had sunk months earlier. James staggered backward. It's pulling the sound down, it's recording us. His sentence broke off as the ground beneath him gave way. The soil split open like wet paper, exposing a sliver of black water only a foot deep. From that gap, a single bubble rose and burst, releasing a whisper that wasn't an echo but a continuation. Back he stared at me, eyes wide. It's still talking. The mist over the lake folded inward, twisting as though drawn by invisible hands. The last thing I heard before the hum faded was my own voice again, faint and exhausted, speaking from somewhere deep below. Don't let it finish the sentence. We ran then, didn't stop until the ranger lights came into view. Behind us, the fog swallowed the dock whole, and for the first time that night, the lake was utterly silent. Later, when the file from the recorder was recovered, the last audio entry was exactly 800 seconds long. It ended with a single whisper, too quiet to isolate, yet unmistakable once you knew what it said. Morning. By sunrise, Lake Merrin looked almost peaceful. Fog lifting, water flat as glass. If you hadn't been there the night before, you'd swear nothing unusual had ever happened. But when I closed my eyes, I could still feel the hum beneath my ribs. That vibration that wasn't sound but memory. Like the lake had recorded the night itself. James didn't sleep. He sat in the ranger cabin with a towel around his wrist, staring at the wound where that translucent arm had grabbed him. The skin had turned faintly gray, almost reflective. When light hit it, the pattern looked like waves. We replayed the recovered audio at 6 a.m. sharp. The tech team expected corrupted noise, maybe a few minutes of static. What came through instead was the full 800-second file, clearer than anything we'd captured before. It began with our voices exactly as we'd spoken them. Then came a sound that made every person in that room go still. Breathing. Not the ragged kind you hear through a microphone. It was slow, controlled, patient. The kind of breathing that belongs to something waiting to be noticed. At the 2-minute mark, the voices began again. Not ours this time. Stay until morning. You came back. It remembers. The audio engineer froze the waveform and looked up. That last one wasn't a human voice, he said quietly. It's layered, like a chord. James stood, pressing his hand to his ear. Play it again, the sound repeated. This time, beneath the voices, we heard something moving. Faint splashes, a creak of old wood, the rhythmic tapping of metal against metal. I recognized it instantly. "That's the dock," I said. "It's still out there." The engineer glanced toward the window. "But the hydrophone was destroyed. There's no signal source." The playback continued anyway. Even with the system unplugged, the file kept playing, faint but steady, like the sound was bleeding into the room through the walls themselves. Then we heard footsteps, wet, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside. No one moved. The handle on the door turned once, slow, then stopped. A thin trickle of lake water began seeping in from underneath, pooling at our feet. James whispered. It followed the recording. The lights flickered. The monitors glowed brighter, displaying a mirrored video feed, not of us, but of the dock. Morning light, pale and flat, reflecting across the water. The fog had lifted. Everything looked calm except for one detail. There were two figures standing where we'd been the night before. They were identical to us. Same jackets, same posture, same everything, except their reflections weren't facing the same direction. The mirrored versions were turned toward the lake. The engineer muttered, "That's not possible." But his voice broke as the camera view zoomed closer by itself. The mirrored version of me stepped forward, bent down, and touched the water. The ripple from that touch spread outward. And on our side, in the real room, the pool of lake water expanded. James staggered back, knocking over a chair. "Turn it off." The engineer yanked the power cable. The screen went black. The room stayed bright for half a second longer than it should have. An afterimage of the video burned into our retinas. The light faded, but the reflection on the window glass didn't vanish with it. There, in the window facing the lake, our reflections kept moving, breathing, waiting. At 7:12 a.m., the first ranger patrol returned from the North Shore. They reported the dock had sunk during the night. The posts were gone, only a few bubbles breaking the surface. The sonar buoys we'd installed to monitor the area had stopped transmitting just after dawn. James didn't want to leave. He insisted on going back one more time to see what the recording wanted. I tried to stop him, but his voice was already different, softer, hollow, like he was speaking through an echo chamber. He went out alone in the patrol skiff. The mist had cleared completely by then, and for a few glorious minutes Lake Merrin looked ordinary again. Then the water moved. Not waves, movement under the surface. Concentric circles forming around the center of the lake. James's boat stopped, engine still running as though something had taken hold beneath it. I shouted his name through the loudspeaker, but he didn't respond. He stood, turned toward me across the water, and raised his hand. The gesture was calm, almost reassuring. Then the lake went silent. The engine died. The boat drifted once, twice, then tipped nose first and went under. No splash, no bubbles. Just gone. I ran to the dock, but by the time I got there, the surface had already smoothed out. When I leaned over, I could see my reflection perfectly clear, until I realized it wasn't mine. James's face stared back from the water, smiling, mouth open. Then the voice rose again, soft and close from right beside my ear. "You came back." I spun around, but no one was there. Only my radio crackling with interference. The voice repeated from the speaker this time, perfectly clear. James's voice. "Don't let it finish the sentence." And then static. They never recovered his body. The Rangers marked it an accident, said he likely drowned when the skiff capsized. But 2 weeks later, one of the sonar buoys came back online briefly. It transmitted for 40 seconds before cutting off. The final ping contained a single audio file, 12 seconds long. It was morning birdsong, gentle wind, and then a faint whisper underneath. Recording begins. The timestamp on that file matched the exact moment the sun rose over Lake Merrin the next day. That's why I left Idaho. I haven't gone near still water since. But sometimes, late at night, when the air's just right, my phone plays something through its speaker. A faint loop of my own voice whispering through static. Don't turn around. Winter came early that year. By late November, Lake Merrin had turned from gray to steel blue, the kind of color that looks solid even when it's still liquid underneath. The first freeze usually happened in December, but that winter the cold hit hard and fast. The locals said it was the earliest solid freeze they'd seen in 20 years. When the ranger's office asked me to check the ice thickness for early skaters, I didn't hesitate. I'd been doing it for years, measuring, marking safe zones, warning kids to stay near shore. It was routine work, but that morning as I stepped out onto the frozen surface, the air felt wrong. The kind of wrong that doesn't come from temperature or wind. The kind that sits just behind your ears, whispering, "Turn around." The first thing I noticed was the silence. No cracking branches, no sound of distant snowmobiles, no echo from the hills. Even my footsteps were too quiet, like the ice was swallowing the sound before it could travel. Halfway across the lake, I stopped to drill the first test hole. The auger bit into the surface, squealing as it met resistance. The ice was thick, almost 10 inches already. I jotted the measurement on my clipboard and looked up. That's when I saw it, a shape trapped beneath the ice. At first I thought it was a log, maybe driftwood frozen in the shallows, but as the sunlight hit it, the outline sharpened. Curved bow, narrow hull, and 2 oars resting perfectly parallel along its sides. A small white rowboat. It was directly beneath me. The ice was so clear that the details looked magnified. Ropes coiled neatly inside, the handle of a rusted lantern near the bow. And something else, a handprint, pressed against the inside of the hull, not smeared, not distorted. Just a single pale imprint, fingers spread wide, frozen against the inner wall as though someone had reached up at the last second before the freeze. I stepped back instinctively. My boot scuffed the ice and sent a dull vibration through the surface. The boat shifted, only a fraction of an inch, but enough to send a cluster of air bubbles racing along its underside like trapped breath. I should have radioed it in right then. Logged it as debris, photographed it for records. But curiosity is a dangerous thing on Merrin, and I'd never learned to ignore it. I knelt down, brushing away a thin layer of frost to get a better look. The deeper I looked, the stranger it became. The ice wasn't perfectly flat anymore. It bulged slightly over the boat, as if the lake had grown around it instead of freezing above it. I leaned closer, squinting at the handprint. That's when I noticed the fingernails. They weren't human. Too long, too thin, curved backward at the ends like talons pressed into glass. My breath fogged the ice, blurring the view. I wiped it clean and froze. There was another handprint beside the first one, smaller than another. Then a dozen more. They spread outward from the hull in a perfect circle, like something had pressed its way up from beneath the lake, reaching toward the trapped boat. A low groan rippled through the ice under my knees, that deep, resonant sound the lake makes when it shifts under pressure. But this wasn't pressure. It was movement. The bubbles beneath the surface began to rise again, spiraling around the hull like air escaping from something deep below. Each circle grew tighter, faster, until the water below turned cloudy with motion. Then the ice went black. It didn't crack or break. It just darkened, like a shadow had passed beneath the frozen surface. I took a step back, then another. The dark patch followed me, gliding just beneath my boots, keeping perfect pace. I started back toward shore, walking fast but steady, careful not to slip. The shadow followed all the way, pausing when I paused, matching my direction each time I changed course. By the time I reached the shallows, my chest was tight from holding my breath. The moment my boots hit snow, the darkness stopped moving. I turned around and looked out across the ice. The lake was still again, perfectly smooth, perfectly calm. But the white boat was gone. The spot where it had been, the one I'd measured earlier, was now just open ice, faintly rippled from within like something had shifted under it. I stood there until my knees started to shake from the cold. I told myself maybe it had been an optical illusion, a trick of refraction through uneven ice. But when I looked down at my clipboard, the pencil markings had smeared. The number I'd written, 10.3 inches, was crossed by a thin, wet line. Condensation, maybe. Except the paper was freezing to my glove. When I peeled it away, I saw the shape burned into the surface. 5 faint marks in a fan shape, the same size as the handprint under the ice. I didn't go back that night. But at dawn, I received a call from a ranger on the east bank. He said there was something strange on the lake, a white shape frozen just below the surface again. He asked if it might be the same boat. I asked where exactly. He gave the coordinates. It was the same place I'd been standing the night before. And this time, he said, there was something inside the boat, something sitting upright, watching. By the time I reached the east bank, the sun had already turned the snow crust to glass. Every step crunched too loudly, echoing across the frozen lake like breaking bones. Ranger Miller was waiting near the tree line, his face red from the wind, breath rising in steady white bursts. He didn't wave. He just pointed toward the middle of the lake. At first I didn't see it. The ice reflected the sky so perfectly that the horizon looked infinite. Then as my eyes adjusted, the shape appeared. Faint, ghost-like, maybe 100 yards out. The white boat was back, but it wasn't empty this time. From where we stood, it looked like someone was sitting inside, head bowed forward, hands resting in their lap. The sunlight glared off the ice, hiding the details. The silhouette didn't move. Could be a body, Miller said quietly. Frozen solid, I nodded but didn't speak. The last time I'd seen that boat, it had been directly beneath my feet. The lake wasn't deep enough for it to sink and resurface miles away overnight, unless something had moved it. We set up the safety line and stepped onto the ice. The wind had died completely, leaving a silence that pressed against the eardrums. Every sound seemed swallowed. My own breathing sounded like someone else's beside me. Halfway there, the ice began to hum. Not a crack or creak. A low, continuous vibration like the distant sound of machinery buried beneath the frozen surface. Miller didn't notice. He kept walking, testing each step with his pole. When we got within 20 feet of the boat, I saw the details. The hull was pristine, no cracks, no frostbite on the wood. A thin layer of frost covered the figure inside, but it was translucent. You could see the outline of a parka, boots, gloved hands. See the badge? Miller whispered. That's one of ours, I squinted. He was right. A small metal ranger badge gleamed faintly through the frost on the figure's chest. Might be from the old crew, I said. The ones that went missing back in '98, he swallowed. They never found them. We knelt by the edge of the boat, the ice creaking softly beneath our weight. The figure's face was turned down, hidden by frost and reflection. Miller leaned closer, scraping a bit of the ice away with his glove. The sound it made, that dry squeal of friction, went through me like a knife. Then the frost cleared, and we both froze. It wasn't a man's face. Not entirely. The features were blurred, soft, like they'd been molded from wax and half melted. The eyes were open but clouded white, and the skin, what we could see of it, had the same faint translucence as the ice itself. Miller whispered, "That's not possible." I started to answer, but the vibration under the ice rose suddenly, deeper, closer. The surface beneath us trembled, tiny cracks spidering outward from our boots. "We're leaving," I said. He nodded and reached for the safety line, but the rope had gone slack. It wasn't broken. It was just gone, sliding across the ice toward the shore as though pulled by something unseen. The white boat shifted slightly. The figure inside lifted its head. Miller gasped and stumbled back, falling to his knees. The figure's movements were slow and deliberate, like someone waking from a long sleep. The frost on its shoulders cracked and fell away, revealing more of that glassy skin. It raised one arm and pressed its hand flat against the ice ceiling between us. The contact point began to melt instantly, water bubbling and freezing again in quick succession, creating a pulsing ring of light. The fingers splayed wider, stretching unnaturally, the joints bending in too many directions. Miller scrambled backward. "It's moving. It's alive." I grabbed his coat and pulled him to his feet. The vibration was strong enough now to shake the air, making my teeth ache. The white boat started to rotate slowly under the ice, turning so that the figure inside faced directly toward us. Its lips parted. No sound came out, but the ice above its mouth clouded in small rhythmic bursts, the pattern of speech without breath. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel the words vibrate through the soles of my boots. The rhythm repeated 3 times before stopping. Then, in the distance, something answered. A knock. 2 slow, heavy impacts from beneath the ice farther out in the lake. The figure in the boat tilted its head toward the sound. Then it reached downward, not with its hands, but with its shadow. The dark shape beneath the hull stretched and lengthened, connecting to the black water beneath us. The knocks came again, closer this time. The vibration became a thrum, a living pulse traveling through the ice like a heartbeat. Miller shouted, "Move!" and turned for shore. I followed. Behind us, the sound rose into a roar, deep, ancient, almost human. When we reached solid ground, the noise stopped instantly. I turned back. The boat was gone again. No trace, no cracks, no frost. Just a smooth, perfect sheet of ice reflecting the pale winter sky. Miller bent double, gasping. "Tell me you saw it." "I saw it," I said. Neither of us spoke for a long time. When we finally started back toward the ranger station, I looked once more over my shoulder. Far out in the center of the lake, the ice rippled, not breaking, not melting, just shifting, and for the briefest moment, I saw the reflection of that white boat gliding beneath the surface, upside down, with the figure still sitting inside, head tilted back as if it was staring up at me through 40 inches of frozen glass. 3 days after the sighting, the temperature rose 12 degrees overnight. That shouldn't have been possible. Not in the valley, not in mid-December. But by morning, the ice at Lake Merrin had begun to sweat. Beads of water formed along the edges, dripping like condensation on glass. It looked less like thawing and more like the lake was exhaling. Miller refused to go back. He claimed the sound still followed him, faint vibrations running through his floorboards at night, steady as a pulse. He left town before the week was over. I stayed. Maybe I shouldn't have. The ranger station's sensor log showed spikes in subsurface temperature around 3 a.m., heat radiating upward from beneath the ice. I took a handheld thermal camera to confirm. When I reached the shore, the air smelled different, less like pine and more like old rainwater trapped in a sealed room. The lake looked alive. Steam curled off its surface even though the air was below freezing. Every few seconds, small bubbles rose from random points beneath the ice, leaving tiny craters that resealed immediately. I walked out onto the surface again, stopping where the white boat had last appeared. The ice felt soft under my boots, not melting but flexible, like standing on the skin of something breathing beneath me. The thermal lens picked up a shape almost instantly. It wasn't a boat this time. It was a circle, 8 feet wide, perfectly symmetrical, glowing faintly warmer than the surrounding ice. In the center, a point of brighter heat pulsed in steady rhythm. Each pulse matched the vibrations in the ground. Then the sound began again, that same deep hum, only slower now, like the heartbeat of something asleep and dreaming. I aimed the camera closer to the center. The heat signature flared, spiking white hot. Through the lens, the ice looked transparent for a second, and I saw movement, shadows twisting around the warm core, swirling like ink in water. Then my radio crackled. At first, I thought it was static. Then words began to form through the noise, muffled, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Help, can't breathe." I froze. It was Miller's voice. "Under ice, can you see me?" I pulled the radio close. "Miller, where are you?" "Repeat, only static." Then faintly, "It's warm down here." The sound cut out. I turned off the radio and looked at the thermal display again. The glowing circle was spreading. It expanded outward, thinning the ice with every pulse. The hum grew louder. I backed toward shore, but my boot slipped on the slick surface. A fracture shot across the ice, clean and fast, stopping inches from my feet. I crouched and shone my flashlight into the crack. Water welled up from below. Not clear lake water, but dark, almost black, carrying flecks of pale material that looked like ash. Then the water began to rise. It didn't flow like normal thaw. It lifted, domed upward, forming a bulge that swelled higher and higher until it stood nearly waist-high. Inside the bulge, something white drifted up from below. The boat, perfectly preserved upside down, pressing against the inner surface of the water like a trapped bubble. The hum rose into a pitch so low it vibrated in my bones. I could feel my pulse sinking with it. The ice under me trembled in steady rhythm and the bulge of water began to rotate. Then it froze solid again, instantly. The hum stopped. The air went still. The boat was suspended halfway between worlds, half ice, half water, gleaming like a fossil encased in glass. And someone was standing beside it, a figure, perfectly vertical under the surface, face turned toward me. I could see it clearly, the same ranger badge, the same heavy coat. Miller. He raised his hand. The motion left trails in the water like smoke caught in wind. He pressed his palm against the inner side of the ice, exactly as the thing in the boat had before. I mirrored the gesture without thinking. For a heartbeat, the ice between our palms thinned to nothing. My glove met cold water. Then the world flipped. I wasn't on the ice anymore. I was under it. Everything inverted, sound, color, weight. I could see the lake's ceiling glowing above me like an overcast sky, pale and distant. The white boat floated upside down overhead, its oars dangling like ribs. Shapes drifted in the water around me. Faint outlines of people, faces half-formed, features dissolving into ripples. None of them moved toward me, but all of them were watching. Their eyes glowed faintly silver, reflecting light that wasn't there. I tried to swim upward, but there was no up. Every stroke pushed me sideways deeper into the shadows. The pressure built behind my ears. My chest burned. Then through the darkness, I saw a single point of light. The lantern, the one that had rested in the white boat. It glowed now, steady and pale, hovering above the lake bed. I kicked toward it. The closer I got, the clearer the water became until I could see the ground below. Smooth, black silt covered in handprints. Hundreds of them. The lantern flared once. Inside its glass, something moved. A reflection that wasn't mine. A voice filled the water around me. You should have left it frozen. The sound wasn't external. It came from inside my skull, vibrating through bone. The pressure increased. My vision went white. When I blinked again, I was lying face down on the ice. My clothes were dry. My radio was silent. The camera was shattered beside me, lens cracked in a spiderweb pattern. Behind me, the lake was still. The bulge was gone. So was the boat. But when I lifted my hand, my glove was wet. Not with water, but with a thin layer of frost shaped like a palm print that didn't belong to me. Every summer, the surface of Lake Merrin looks harmless again. The snowmelt feeds it until it turns that cold, flawless blue that makes tourists forget what lies underneath. They come with kayaks and paddleboards, take selfies on the dock, and talk about how peaceful it feels. But if you watch long enough, you'll notice the water never stays still. Even when the wind dies, Merrin moves. It breathes. I didn't believe that part until last August when a group of local swimmers vanished, not beneath the lake, but above it. It started on a Sunday afternoon. 6 of them, young, all locals, were swimming near the West Cove. The cove is shallow, the safest part of the lake. The rangers allow swimming there because the current is usually weak, and the water rarely gets deeper than 20 feet. That day, the water was warm, calm, and deceptively clear. I was across the shore doing maintenance checks on the buoys when I heard the first scream. It wasn't panic, not yet, just confusion. Someone yelling for help because one of the swimmers had stopped moving. By the time I reached the dock, the others were treading water, pointing upward. At first, I thought they were looking for a drone or maybe a bird, but then I saw what they were seeing. One of the swimmers, and a girl in a red suit, wasn't beneath the surface. She was above it, only by a few feet, maybe 6 or 7. Her arms were spread, her hair drifting around her head as though she were suspended underwater. Except she wasn't. The sunlight hit her directly. She was floating in open air, parallel to the lake, her reflection perfectly clear on the surface below. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then someone screamed again. The girl began to rise, slow and smooth, like a balloon caught in invisible current. Her body tilted slightly, her fingertips brushing against the reflection of herself in the water. When her hand made contact, the reflection rippled, not outward but upward toward her, as though the surface of the lake was trying to meet her halfway. That's when the others started swimming toward shore. The air felt heavier, charged. I could hear it buzzing faintly like static right before a lightning strike. The girl was 10 feet up now, motionless, eyes closed. Then the lake stirred. The ripples didn't spread out. They spiraled inward, forming a perfect whirlpool at the exact spot beneath her. But instead of pulling down, the current pulled up. The water stretched upward in a long, thin column, wrapping around her like glass. It shimmered, translucent, connecting her to the lake below. Then everything went still. The column froze in place, suspended in the air, clear as crystal. Inside it, I could see her face, peaceful, almost serene, her body encased in a twisting tube of water that hovered 6 feet above the lake's surface. The others were already running toward me on the dock, screaming. But I couldn't move. I was staring at that impossible column, trying to understand how it held together. The edges shimmered like heat haze, tiny droplets spinning around it in orbit. Then the sound began. A low hum, faint at first, rising steadily. It wasn't coming from the air or the water. It was inside my skull, vibrating behind my eyes. The column began to pulse with the rhythm of the sound, and suddenly the water wasn't clear anymore. It was dark, murky. Something was moving inside it, swirling around her body like smoke in a jar. Her eyes opened. They were completely white. The hum reached a pitch that rattled the dock planks under my boots. The column shattered with a sound like a breaking mirror. Water exploded outward, drenching everything. The impact nearly knocked me over. When I looked up, the girl was gone. No splash, no body. Just ripples spreading across the lake, widening slowly and then disappearing altogether. The air pressure dropped all at once. The buzzing stopped. Birds started singing again. The other swimmers were screaming her name. I called for backup and we started searching the lake. Divers came within the hour. They scoured the West Cove until nightfall. Nothing. No body, no debris, no signs of drowning. But here's the part that kept me up later. The footage. The ranger's observation drone had been flying overhead during the incident. It caught everything in 4K. When we played it back frame by frame, the girl's reflection on the lake was perfectly visible the whole time, even after she had vanished. For 43 seconds, her reflection kept swimming calm and slow, while the real world above it showed nothing. At the 44th second, the reflection stopped and faced the drone's camera directly. Her eyes were still white. Then it sank straight down into the lake. The footage ended there. When the divers reviewed the coordinates, they found something else. A column of water rising from the lake floor, faint but visible in the sonar scan. It wasn't descending like a normal current. It was flowing upward. The scan showed particles, bits of sand, plant matter, debris, all drifting against gravity toward the surface, gathering in a single spiral that stopped just beneath the reflection point. That's why the locals don't swim there anymore. At night, if the wind dies and the surface goes still, you can sometimes see the water lifting in long, thin tendrils. They curl upward into the air like invisible strings tugging at the surface. And if you stand on the dock long enough, you'll hear it. A faint hum that vibrates in your chest, like the sound of something breathing above you. We closed the West Cove for the rest of the summer, but that didn't stop people from coming. They just came later, after sunset when the lake looked black and endless. Teenagers mostly. They brought lanterns and phones, daring each other to walk out onto the dock where the girl had vanished. They called it the lift spot. By September, the rumors were out of control. Some said the girl was seen walking near the shoreline, soaking wet and smiling. Others said she never came back because the lake had taken her reflection instead of her body. I'd heard stories like that before, in other towns, but never from witnesses who looked as terrified as these. The thing about Lake Merrin is that it doesn't invent myths, it records them. The real trouble started 2 weeks later when the drone footage went public. Someone leaked it online, and within days, paranormal bloggers started showing up. That's how I met Tom Reiner, a local videographer who claimed he could scientifically debunk the whole event. He arrived with 2 cameras, a sound recorder, and enough arrogance to ignore every warning sign nailed to the trees. He wanted to film at night. I told him it wasn't safe. He laughed. "What's it gonna do, pull me upward?" We went out anyway. The moon was full and the water looked like liquid mercury. The surface was so flat it reflected the tree line perfectly, so clear that when you looked down, you couldn't tell which world you were in. Tom set up a tripod on the dock, right at the spot where the girl had last floated. His reflection moved below him, crisp and still. He pointed one of his cameras at it, saying, "If this lake is stealing reflections, then I'll give it mine." I stood behind him, watching the screen. At first, everything looked normal. The camera showed both of us standing on the dock, the lake stretching out behind. Then Tom leaned forward to adjust focus and his reflection didn't move. It just stayed there. "Hold still," I said. He froze. We watched the screen together. He raised his left hand. The reflection raised its right. Then it stopped following altogether. "Must be a glitch," he muttered, forcing a laugh. "Cameras mirror the image anyway." But it wasn't the camera. I could see it with my eyes. His reflection on the lake wasn't synced anymore. It tilted its head a moment too late, blinked at the wrong times. Then it smiled. Tom wasn't smiling. The reflection's grin widened until it looked painful, the mouth stretching too far, teeth sharp and thin as cracks in glass. "Back away," I said. He didn't move. The air had changed again, that same low-pressure hum vibrating under the dock. The water around his boots began to tremble, not from wind, but from motion beneath the surface. Tom's reflection lowered its hand and pressed its palm against the underside of the dock, as though testing the barrier. Ripples spread outward in perfect circles. The hum grew louder. "Tom!" I shouted. He blinked like waking from a trance and stepped back just as the boards beneath him swelled upward. A thin column of water burst through a crack between the planks, rising straight into the air. It wasn't spraying. It was pulling like a rope tightening from below. Tom stumbled backward, grabbing his camera. The column reached up toward him, twisting midair like a snake. I grabbed him by the jacket and yanked him away. The water followed us, stretching farther than it should have been able to. It moved like it had structure, like muscle. Then it snapped, collapsing back into the lake with a hollow thud that echoed across the shore. Everything went silent again. The reflection was gone. Tom sat on the snow-dusted planks, shaking. "Did you see that? What the hell was that?" Before I could answer, his camera beeped. It had automatically saved the last 30 seconds. He replayed it, scrolling frame by frame. That's when I realized what had happened. The reflection hadn't disappeared. It had moved. In the final frame, just before the column snapped, the reflection was no longer beneath Tom. It was behind him, standing upright on the water, watching. Its face was calm. Its eyes glowed faintly white. He stared at the screen, whispering, "That's me." "No," I said quietly. "Not anymore." He packed up in silence, hands shaking. As we reached the shore, he turned off his gear and muttered, "I'll edit it later." But he didn't. 2 nights later, Tom Reiner was found in his cabin 5 miles east of Merrin. The camera was still recording when the deputies arrived. He was sitting upright in front of the mirror, staring at his own reflection. The footage showed him speaking quietly to it like a child repeating a bedtime prayer. "I see you, I see you, I see you." Each line slower, quieter, until his reflection blinked and didn't open its eyes again. When the deputies entered the room, the glass was cold to the touch. They said his body was dry, but the floor beneath him was soaked in lake water. He'd drowned without leaving a single drop inside his lungs. It's strange what memory chooses to keep. Some nights I can't remember my own father's face, but I can recall every detail of that dock. The way the boards curved slightly at the edges, how the nails rusted in rings that looked like eyes, how the water below was so dark it seemed to absorb light instead of reflect it. After Tom's death, they sealed off the West Cove permanently. Yellow tape, warning signs, and a new steel fence along the trail. Didn't matter. People still came. Some brought flowers, some brought cameras. Some said the lake called them. By October, I was the only ranger still assigned to Merrin. Everyone else had transferred or taken leave. That's when I started seeing the columns again. It always began the same way. Dead calm water, no wind, and that faint hum like power lines vibrating through bone. Then without warning, the surface would bulge upward. Thin streams of water rising into the air, twisting together into tall, translucent spirals. They shimmered faintly blue, each one connecting the lake to nothing, reaching, stretching, searching. They never lasted more than a few minutes. But every time they vanished, I noticed something missing along the shore. First a dock ladder, then a buoy chain, then a rowboat. Small things, but always something connected to the water. Until one night. It wasn't a thing that vanished, it was a person. Her name was Mara Fielding, a seasonal maintenance worker assigned to the north ramp. She radioed me around 10:15 p.m., her voice trembling with static. "You seeing this? The water's up here." Before I could respond, her transmission distorted. Long bursts of feedback, then silence. When I arrived 10 minutes later, her flashlight was still lying on the dock, beam pointing upward, illuminating something that shouldn't have existed. A sheet of water was suspended 6 feet above the boards. Not falling, not misting, hovering. The light from the flashlight passed through it perfectly, bending slightly like it does underwater. Inside that floating sheet, I could see ripples moving as if something were swimming through it horizontally right above my head. Mara's footprints ended where the shadow of the water began. I called her name. No answer. I took one cautious step forward. The air temperature dropped instantly, my breath crystallizing midair. The hum was stronger now, resonating inside my skull like it had replaced my heartbeat. Above me, the water began to spin. It formed a slow whirlpool, not down into the lake, but upward toward the clouds. The spiral thickened until I could see faint shapes moving within it, outlines of hands pressing outward from inside the liquid wall. Each print appeared for only a second before dissolving, replaced by another. The smell hit next, and cold, metallic, almost electric. The scent of deep water that hasn't seen sunlight in centuries. I tried backing away, but the dock vibrated under my boots. A ripple spread across the planks, and the floating water responded like a mirror, echoing the movement a heartbeat later. Then a face appeared. It wasn't Mara's. It wasn't anyone I knew. It looked ancient, features blurred by water, eyes clouded white, mouth half open as though whispering. The ripples distorted its shape until it almost looked human. I raised my radio again. "Base, this is Merrin Station." "Something's happening." The voice that answered wasn't the dispatcher. It wasn't human at all. "You're underneath it." The radio clicked and went silent. The floating water began to lower, sinking slowly toward the dock like a descending ceiling. Droplets started forming in midair, hanging motionless before joining the surface above. I could hear faint whispers coming from inside it now. Fragments of voices I recognized: Tom's voice, Mara's voice, the girl from the West Cove, each one saying the same thing, overlapping like waves hitting each other. "It's warmer up here." The hum rose again, deep enough to shake the dock posts loose. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the boards. My flashlight clattered away. When I looked up, the water was inches above my face. Through it, I saw my own reflection, upside down, distorted, mouth moving though I wasn't speaking. The reflection reached down. The moment its fingers touched my forehead, the hum stopped. Everything went quiet. The floating water froze in midair, still as glass. The reflection stared down at me, expression unreadable. Then it blinked once, slow, deliberate, and the entire mass of water collapsed. It didn't splash. It fell solid, knocking the breath from my lungs. The dock disappeared beneath it. For a second I was weightless, surrounded by light and pressure and motion. Then I was standing again, soaked, staring out over a perfectly calm lake. No sign of Mara. No footprints. No sound. Only one thing had changed. The reflection on the water was gone. Not mine. The lake's. The stars above no longer mirrored on the surface. The moonlight didn't bounce back. The lake had stopped reflecting anything at all, as if it no longer needed to. When investigators arrived the next morning, I told them what I'd seen. They found my radio half buried in ice near the dock. It had one final transmission saved to its internal recorder, a whisper. Familiar. "Don't look up." They didn't believe me, of course. But that night I drove back to the cove and stood where the reflection used to be. The sky was full of stars and the lake was dark, opaque, and still. Then faintly I saw it, one ripple spreading above me, like something swimming across the underside of the night. Every fisherman has a story about something they saw on sonar they couldn't explain. Strange readings, phantom depths, ghost shapes that blinked out when the equipment reset. But what happened on Lake Merrin that October wasn't a glitch. It was something watching back. The man who saw it was Earl Kessner, a night fishing guide who'd worked those waters for 25 years. He'd fished through fog, snow, and wildfire ash so thick it looked like rain. He'd seen his fair share of odd reflections and equipment hiccups, but nothing like this. It began during a late-season charter, just him and 2 clients trolling for trout near the center of the lake. The night was clear, the water calm, the sonar screen glowing faint green in the dark. Around midnight, one of the clients asked, "What's that?" Earl glanced down. The depth meter read 72 feet, but something was rising from the bottom, a shape large and slow, climbing toward them. At first, he thought it was a school of fish, the kind that cluster close enough to look like one big mass. But the outline didn't shift or break apart. It was steady, solid. The sonar's contour lines redrew themselves in real time, the lake bed dipping, the object's silhouette becoming clearer. It wasn't a fish. It was a face. 2 deep hollows like eyes, a ridge that could only be a nose, and a long open void where a mouth should have been. The clients leaned in, whispering nervously. "It looks human," one said. "Like a carving," but it wasn't on the lake floor anymore. The face was moving, tilting upward as if turning to look directly at them. Earl's gut told him to kill the motor, so he did. The engine's vibration died and the water went perfectly still. The sonar pinged once, twice. Then a new sound came through the speaker. Not the usual echo, but a rhythmic pulse, soft and wet, matching the pace of breathing. The clients laughed nervously. Probably interference. Earl tried to adjust gain, but the buttons were unresponsive. The screen flickered, then locked onto a single frame. The face, perfectly centered, features sharpened as though the machine had decided to focus. He shut it off. The display stayed on. The pupils, or what looked like pupils, moved. He yanked the battery cable. The screen went black. For a moment, there was silence. Then the boat shifted as if something had brushed against the hull. A slow scraping sound traveled from stern to bow like nails dragging along metal. Earl turned on his spotlight and aimed it over the side. The beam cut across the water, revealing nothing but ripples. Still, the scraping continued, gentle, deliberate, circling the boat. The clients looked terrified now. "Is it under us?" one asked. Earl dropped the depth transducer over the side again and reset the sonar manually. It powered up after a few seconds, flickering through calibration screens until the depth reading appeared. 13 feet. That wasn't possible. The center of Merrin was more than 70 deep. He moved the sensor to the other side. Same reading. The lake floor had risen, or something beneath them had. The sonar beeped twice and drew a new outline on the display. Not a face this time, but something wider, flatter. The contours rippled and folded, forming shapes that looked disturbingly like hands. 5 distinct extensions pressed upward against the inside of the digital depth field, bending the readout lines outward as though pushing from underneath. Earl's chest tightened. "Pull the rods in," he ordered. One of the clients hesitated. "What's happening?" "Just do it." The man reached for his fishing rod, but before he could touch it, the line jerked hard enough to cut his hand. Blood splattered across the reel. The line hissed through the guides and vanished into the black water. The sonar screamed, a constant tone instead of pings. The signal maxed out like it was bouncing off solid matter. Then the screen changed again. The face was back, closer now, filling the entire display. The depth reading blinked erratically between 72, 41, 23, 9, until it stopped at 3 feet. The client screamed. Earl grabbed the oar and slammed it against the hull, shouting into the water. "Whatever you are, back off." The sonar speaker responded immediately with a burst of static that shaped itself into words. "I'm here." The motor refused to start. The oars moved sluggishly, like pushing through syrup. Every sound was amplified, each breath, each ripple. The faint buzz of the transducer vibrating against the hull. Then something rose beside the boat. It broke the surface silently. Not a head, not a creature, but a smooth, flat plane of water that lifted upward like a mirror standing on end. Within it, he could see their reflections. Only the reflections weren't following their movements anymore. Earl lifted the spotlight, trembling. The reflection of his own face on the water was staring straight at him, mouth open in a silent scream. The sonar pinged once more, and this time the reading wasn't a depth number, it was text. "Look behind you." Earl turned. Nothing, just darkness and fog. He looked back at the screen. The word had changed. Closer. The reflection in the water tilted its head. Then the mouth in the sonar image began to move. Slowly, steadily, shaping the words the machine couldn't say. Earl dropped the transducer and gunned the motor. It roared to life this time, tearing the boat forward. The water flattened behind him, perfectly smooth again. When he finally looked down at the sonar one last time, the display had gone dark, except for one faint outline still glowing at the center, a face smiling and blinking. When Earl brought the boat in that night, he didn't speak. Not to the clients, not to the rangers, not to anyone. He just hauled the gear off the deck, locked the sonar case, and left it on the dock like he wanted nothing more to do with it. The next morning, when I found him sitting outside the bait shed, he looked different, hollow-eyed, like someone who hadn't slept or maybe hadn't stopped listening. The lake behind him was still and gray, but his hands were trembling like he could still feel it moving beneath him. He told me everything. The voice, the reflection, the message. I wanted to believe it was panic mixed with exhaustion, but the sonar unit still worked. And when I turned it on, the memory log displayed the saved images, frame after frame of depth readings, distorted and warped until they took the shape of something staring upward. Each frame darker than the last, the final image was pure static, until I looked closer. Beneath the noise, faint and centered, was a small, unmistakable curve, a smile. Earl wouldn't go near the water after that. But 3 nights later, he called me again. His voice was shaking. "It's back." When I reached his cabin, the sound hit me before I saw the lake. That low, pulsing hum that made windows rattle and teeth ache, the kind of vibration you don't just hear but feel. He was standing on the porch with the sonar device turned on, screen glowing through the dark. The transducer wasn't even in the water. It was hanging from his hand, still dripping. "Listen," he said. The speaker emitted faint pings, regular and clean. Then between them came something else, an echo that didn't match the timing. Ping. Silence, echo, ping. Silence, echo. Always half a beat late, like something was returning the signal on purpose. Earl looked at me, eyes wide. "It's calling back." I stepped closer, watching the display redraw the depths. The numbers shifted constantly, 74, then 50, then 30. Then the screen cleared completely, replaced by one smooth, curved outline. It wasn't a reading. It was a surface. Something massive, flat, and close enough to register as solid. Earl swallowed hard. "That's right under us. But the water's only 8 feet deep here." He lowered the transducer into the lake again. The cable twitched immediately, tension pulling it toward the water's center. The device beeped twice and then, "Hello." The word appeared in all caps, flashing across the sonar display. We both jumped back. "Who's transmitting?" I asked. Earl shook his head. "It's not connected to anything." I removed the network port. "It shouldn't..." The word blinked again. "Hello." Then another appeared beneath it. "Stay." The transducer cable tightened further, pulling against Earl's grip. He tried to reel it in, but the resistance was too strong. The line trembled like something was dragging it through the water, deeper and deeper. He cut the power. The sonar stayed on. A new word flashed across the screen. "Don't." The speaker emitted a noise I can only describe as breathing through static. Short, deliberate inhales and long, shuddering exhales. Every exhale created ripples on the water's surface, perfectly circular, expanding toward the shore. Earl's dog started barking from inside the cabin. Then the window glass cracked, a single line running from top to bottom. The hum deepened. We backed away from the lake. The sonar display zoomed in automatically, focusing on one section of the outline. The face again, clearer this time, features sharpened by interference. The mouth opened. Closer. The sound wasn't coming from the speaker anymore. It was coming from the water. Ripples converged into a single column, rising slightly above the surface. Inside it, bubbles formed the shape of eyes and a mouth. The column tilted toward us, following our movement like a head turning. Earl whispered, "It's mapping us." Then the sonar beeped rapidly, lines racing across the display, tracing new contours, our silhouettes standing at the edge of the water. The shapes flickered as the data redrew itself. When the final outline appeared, there were 3 figures instead of 2. We both turned around. No one was there. The sonar beeped again. The 3rd figure on the screen raised its hand. At the same instant, water splashed behind us, a small, deliberate drop that hit the sand between our feet. Earl's face went white. "It's up here." He bolted toward the cabin, dragging the sonar with him. The transducer ripped free of the lake, trailing a line of black water that steamed where it touched the ground. Inside, the lights flickered. The hum was louder now, echoing through the floorboards. He dropped the sonar onto the table, shouting, "Tell me you see it. Tell me you..." The display went white. A new line of text appeared. "Look down." We did. The water had followed us inside. Thin streams were seeping across the floor, forming perfect circles around our boots. They weren't soaking into the wood. They were moving, slowly rotating clockwise. Then the sound of pings began again. Not from the sonar this time, but from beneath the house, echoing through the foundation. Something was using the lake bed like a drum. Earl stared at the screen. "It's under the ground." Before I could answer, the sonar emitted one final pulse. The display redrew the outline of the lake, but this time, the shape wasn't flat. It curved upward as if the bottom of Lake Merrin was no longer below us, but above. The last word appeared in the center of the screen. Up, then the power cut. When the power cut, the silence felt alive. You could hear the air itself moving. That slow hiss of static that isn't sound but pressure. Earl's cabin was small. One room and a stove, the kind of place meant for solitude. But that night it felt like the lake had moved in with us. The sonar lay dead on the table, its screen dark, but the faint smell of ozone hung in the air, like the aftermath of lightning. Beneath our feet the boards vibrated. Not shaking, breathing, Earl whispered. It's under us. The words barely left his mouth before one of the floorboards popped loose with a hollow crack. A line of water beaded along the seam and began to spread, tracing strange looping patterns. I knelt, flashlight trembling in my hand, and watched as the puddle formed into precise geometric lines, curves, intersections. A structure, it's drawing something, I said. Earl crouched beside me, eyes wide. That's Merrin. That's the lake, he was right. The water had shaped itself into a miniature map, an exact outline of the lake's perimeter. And in the center, a tiny spiral began forming, a whirlpool no larger than a coin. The water rose slightly, rotating faster. The spiral expanded until it touched the cabin walls. The boards creaked under the pressure, bending upward as if pulled from below. Then we heard the ping. Not from the sonar, from under the floor. Sharp, metallic, deliberate, it came again. Then again, faster, a rhythm that mimicked the sonar's scan pattern. Each ping shook dust from the rafters. Earl shouted over the noise, "It's mapping us! It's using the sonar through the ground." The puddle of water at our feet began to glow faintly blue. The lines shifted, redrawing themselves, not as the lake anymore, but as rooms. Rectangles, walls, hallways. It was a floor plan, but not of the cabin, of something beneath it. My flashlight flickered. The bulb popped with a snap, plunging us into darkness. The glow from the water brightened in response, pulsing with the same heartbeat rhythm we'd felt since the first ping. Earl whispered, "We built this place on top of it." Before I could ask what he meant, the boards below us groaned and flexed. A narrow crack split across the floor, stretching from wall to wall. Cold air rushed upward, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of deep water, metallic, stagnant, ancient. I leaned close and shined the faint light from my phone into the gap. Water moved beneath the cabin. Not still, not calm. It was flowing horizontally, a stream that pulsed upward, fighting gravity like the lake itself was trying to climb into the room. Then the phone's compass spun wildly. North, south, east, the readings flickered uselessly. Earl stepped back. "It's reversing the magnetic field. The sonar's still active down there." He wasn't wrong. The pings were coming faster now, layered until they blended into a low hum that shook the walls. The dead sonar on the table flickered back to life, its screen glowing white. No numbers, no depth. Just one word. Open. Before either of us could move, the crack in the floor split wide. Water surged up, clear and cold, filling the space in seconds. It didn't flood like normal water. It rose in a single solid shape, forming a column that reached the ceiling. Inside that column, faint outlines shifted, drifting upward like air bubbles that refused to break. Faces. Hundreds of them, each one looking upward, mouths open in silent breath. They pressed against the inside of the water, pale hands spreading wide, fingers splaying like they wanted out. Earl screamed and stumbled backward. The column followed, bending toward him without breaking apart. I grabbed his arm, but the water was already touching his boots. The sonar pinged one final time. Map complete. The column expanded outward, swallowing him. His body vanished inside the glowing water without a ripple. The air filled with static. That same soft breathing sound multiplied 100-fold. Every window shattered outward. The floorboards buckled under the weight and the cabin split open like paper. I hit the ground outside and rolled down the hill toward the lake. When I looked back, the entire structure was sinking, not collapsing, sinking. Like the earth beneath it had become fluid. The light from the column dimmed slowly until it disappeared completely beneath the surface. When the vibration stopped, all that remained was silence. They never found Earl. The official report listed sinkhole collapse caused by underground stream erosion. But when divers went down, they found something else. a perfect square foundation 30 feet below the lake bed. On each wall, etched into the stone, were patterns identical to sonar readings, waveforms frozen in rock. And in the center, one circular engraving perfectly shaped like a human face. The diver's footage cut off when the readings spiked. The last frame showed the face in detail, mouth slightly open. When analyzed later, the grooves around the lips weren't random scratches. They spelled something in Morse code, hello.